What's up, guys? Today we're going to be addressing the question, does Monster Hunter World PC have better quality than Monster Hunter World on console? I do have my press copy of Monster Hunter World PC and I've been testing all the different graphical settings. In this video, we will be comparing Monster Hunter World at maximum settings on PC, minimum settings on PC, and then on the PS4 Pro. Obviously, the PS4 Pro has 3 different modes. We've gone ahead and used the resolution setting for this comparison video because this time it's less about the frame rates that the game runs at and more about how the game looks when you crank up the eye candy. It is super important to note that I am playing this on my maxed out rig, which is a 7980XE with a 1080 Ti. So unless you have a Volta card, you won't be getting better results than me. But if you do have a 1080 or a 1080 Ti, you should be getting similar results to me on the PC version. A great place to gauge these differences is actually the first area in the game, which is the Ancient Forest. This is a really good area to gauge graphical differences because of all the different environments available. There's the beach, there's all that water, and there is a huge amount of foliage. And foliage is something that generally GPUs struggle with a little bit. So as you can see, there is a massive difference between PC at max settings and PC at minimum settings. And while it is very playable at minimum settings, and I think you will still have a great time with Monster Hunter World if you have no other way to play it, I do think that minimum settings is the worst of the 3 ways to play the game. In comparison, the difference between PS4 Pro and max settings on the PC is very small. I have noticed on the PC that you see less of that pop-in of the small details. They do render at a further distance, so you don't see them jar into existence quite so much as on the PS4. And of course, it will run at a smoother frame rate. The PS4 Pro runs on this setting at about 30 to 40 frames per second. On my 1080 Ti, I was pushing 40 to 60 frames per second depending on the area and the action going on. Once you get into areas with less foliage, the differences do become less noticeable, especially the clouds in the distance, the skyboxes, the birds, the models of the creatures. They all end up looking about the same on both the PS4 Pro and on the PC on max settings. On min settings, obviously, your details are reduced, your textures are reduced, but minimum settings is really about pushing that frame rate to the absolute maximum, and I do have to say, on minimum settings, I never dropped between the 165 maximum refresh rate of my monitor with G-Sync, so I was at 165 frames per second with G-Sync 100% of the time, and the game was ultra buttery smooth. My theoretical max frames per second on the minimum settings was actually 240, so I could probably crank those settings up just a bit and keep that 165 frame rate, which is definitely a great consideration for people attempting speedruns or anything that requires really brain-perfect gameplay. At this point, there's really no need to be comparing the minimum PC settings graphically to max or PS4. They are far and away less pretty. But let's go back to the PC at max versus the PS4. Once we got into combat, the frame rate difference did seem a little bit more noticeable, but overall the bloom from the Wyvern fire that I used with the heavy bowgun looked around about the same. The damage splats and the sparks as we hit the monster with the pierce shots also looked around about the same, so the combat doesn't look that different other than the frame rate difference, which is only down to the ridiculously powerful graphics card that I have. Again, when scanning around the environment, you see a slight amount of pop-in with the PS4 version, which just isn't present on the PC version, but these are absolutely tiny differences. The last thing I do want to quickly note, and this is a shout out to Socks at Capcom and also 269 on Twitter, who is part of the Arex gaming team. They gave me the advice to turn off volume rendering in order to boost frame rates. Once I did, I was able to run on the max graphical settings, but with 70 to 100 frames per second. And at that point, Monster Hunter World looks just amazing. It plays so smoothly. And I am actually very tempted to just limit my frame rate down to 60, turn off the volume rendering, and have perfect 60 frames per second gameplay all the time, because that is exactly where you want to be when you're streaming or recording video. So it is really important that once you turn off volume rendering, you keep all the other max settings on. It looks like what you are looking at on your screen right now, and it runs at a beautiful 70 to 100 frames per second pretty much all the time. I think it dipped down to 58 absolute minimum during a really highly rendered section with an Anjanath on the screen and a Great Jagras at the same time. Please let me know in the comments down below what else you want to see from Monster Hunter World. I do have a video planned on the best way to use keyboard and mouse with the bowgun, because that's what I've been using keyboard and mouse for. I have remapped my settings. I thought that might be a video you guys might want to see. But other than that, I'll see you guys next time.